Thank you, everybody. This is MangoTango. We're here with Drunk Hydra, and today we're going to have a discussion a little bit more about constructed play, going into how that affects into Arena, and we do have a special guest. I'm going to let Travis introduce him.
Ah, that was passing the buck.
You bet
All
it
right, so
is.
Matt the Cutter Newberg, and yes, we have to phrase that way. If anyone has listened to Mega Holland, I actually met him during Star Realms. I think he beat me. Hold on, I might have won 2 games. I'm not sure. I don't think there's proof. So anyway, I reached out to him as we started playing Epic because I saw the Cutter namesake showed up. Now it was two things. It was either him or it was someone who wanted to claim that name and sell it to him. I'm not sure where it was going, and it turns out it was him. So
What's up, guys? How you doing?
I'm
Thanks for
hanging
having
in
me
there.
on. NightHydra, you're being kind. I happen to remember we must have had a lot of good games because as I found you in the community and saw your name, I remembered we had a lot of good games. I have a feeling we went pretty even.
I mean, the way my memory works, I'll accept that. I no, I mean, I've obviously I can say I can hold my own in a lot of, but I also know that I jump in a lot of sections. Now, so since we've already started to bridge the gap, Star Realms, you made I know it's going to sound like I'm blowing smoke. You made some big waves. One, you have had I apologize. I haven't been on Star Realms app in a while, but you had a very good standing. You were on Mega Holland. You have a very good relationship with White Wizard Game. So why are you playing Epic?
Yeah, thanks. I think where I originally sort of people know me is I did sort of set up the fan community page on Facebook and admin there and ran tournaments for a long time. That is what helped get me onto Mega Hall and really enjoyed that experience with Dustin. And yeah, that did lead to a very good relationship, of course, with White Wizard Games. Um, and I love Star Realms. I've got 30,000 games on the app. But yeah, Epic comes around, and it's a tremendous game. It's a different game. I love that it has some of the things that build a White Wizard Games product, not necessarily a ton of things that are direct carryovers from Star Realms, a deck builder. But
Well,
really,
but also especially the fact that Epic actually came first in its first iteration. Like that was back when Epic TCG. That was actually the name of. I'm pretty sure Epic was put out by Epic, the company, which there are many people have transitioned over. So technically, the groundwork for everything we know and love came from Epic. Technically.
Yeah, no, and that's all news to me. I don't know anything about any sort of iteration prior to this one. Um,
Oh, it had
you know,
90 CG art. It was amazing. If you like the show Reboot or Transformers Beast Wars, it had that level of art on cards, and it made me. There was an angel holding a chain gun. It made me
funny.
so happy.
Well, here is a question for you. Did you ever play the physical card game? Because
Are you
I
asking me if I played the current iteration, or are you asking
the
Travis
current
if he played the?
iteration. Because
Oh no, he
Travis and
knows I
I
played
both
the
have
old one
sat down
because I
and
was
played
bad
it.
at it. Yeah, so Matt, have you actually played the
Yeah. So
Epic the card game?
absolutely. So I did kickstart it, of course. I'm obviously going to kickstart really anything that White Wizard does. I'm a little bit of a shill in that regard.
No, they have
Um,
always fulfilled. They've always fulfilled on time. I mean, overall on time. There's a slight delay in Hero Realms. I will not take that from them. They have a track record of fulfilling product, doing what they said, stretch goals. So I mean, the stuff they had for Epic the card game. How many cards did they add in the Kickstarter pack? Wasn't it like 30 or something ridiculous? Like it was. It was a
yeah, one,
ridiculous sized pack.
yeah, I think it was around maybe 20 cards plus those maybe demigods or whatever they were.
Oh, and
Um,
demigods are my favorite. But anyway,
it,
keep going. Yes, sorry.
so it, when we first got it, we dabbled in it a little bit, but at the time, again, I'm playing 20 plus games of Star Realms at that point, so I didn't really give Epic much of a look. However, later that year, was very fortunate. White Wizard Games did kind of give me a nod into Epic's first World Championship. So they allowed me to play into the money round, the top 64, without having to earn it. Most of the people there did have to earn it. There were, I believe, seven Magic the Gathering pros that got this nod, and then 5 of us from Star Realms. So really, I had to sort of, yeah, absolutely. I had to learn the game. I had about 7 weeks. I had not, except for dabbling, just getting the pack, I had not done anything with Constructed or anything like that. So I had 7 weeks to really learn and try to make at least a showing. Didn't make much of a showing. I did win a couple of matches, but really didn't, kind of got the minimum. But yeah, no, that from that experience and learning and prepping up for that, me and another friend, we were playing face to face a lot. We were playing 4 or 5 hours a day leading up to that event, and we kept doing a good amount after that. Unfortunately, he and I have had a little bit of a falling out since then. I did ramp.
Dude, it's life. That's how life is. Brandon and I have had, we've been through the thick. We've known each other for over 10 years. I mean, that life happens.
Yeah. So I ramped up again, for Origins last year, face to face. Most of my play really has been in the app. I did stay active through the entire alpha. And this is why, guys, I'm so excited to share this enthusiasm. You guys coming out and making content right away is fantastic. And this is going to
it's not good. It's not actually valid. But, why let that slow us down?
I love that it's what I'm trying to also do, bringing back to your original question. I want to help try to usher in and help ease the transition for some Star Realms players, because it is a very different game. And it has a much steeper curve. There's a lot of things about Epic that are amazing. Let me kind of read if you guys don't mind, I'm going to read what I consider my review of Epic. This is what I have on my videos in the description on my YouTube.
I really hope it starts with, I'm Matt TheCutter Newberg. I'm better than you, and here's how you can be just less than.
Travis has been nice to be featured in some of my streams, which are featured here on the YouTube channel.
It's usually you kicking me all of but one game, but sure.
So this is kind of how I wrap it up. I say Epic offers several compelling experiences and everyone should give it a try. Will a prolonged or competitive play be for everybody? No. Will you love it because you love Star Realms? No. It's in an entirely different genre of card games. I love it because it's an excellent, well-designed game. What it does share with Star Realms is the model. Cost-effective, balanced, deep replay, several ways to consume it, and a beautiful, free app. It's not quite as simple, but it can be if you invest the time to learn it. Available now for Android and iOS and Steam. It is actually free and not all gunked up with ads. All cards and most features are included. In-game purchases offer aesthetic preference and entry to sanctioned events.
Well, so you mentioned that now. Do you feel like the balance is better or worse or equal? And I understand that's a loaded question compared to, say, Star Realms, because they both feature 4 factions, and a little confusingly, they're also the same 4 colors, but that's just purely aesthetic. I'm not really going to give them any bunk for that. Do you feel like there is because in the original Star Realms base game, now I'm not faulting them in the slightest, because they fixed it more in later models, but the original base game of Star Realms, it was like, did you get Freighter on turn 2, turn 3? Okay. Did you get Brain World before your opponent had a chance? Okay. Because there were, you can't argue that Star Realms didn't have some busted opens I win versus, some of these random 30s where, and I understand you don't, well, actually, I'll ask you about random 30s in a sec, but some of these random 30s where you're not out of it right away. In some games of Star Realms, you arguably could all but be lost by turn 2.
It's interesting. I guess I kind of felt like the base set itself was exceptionally balanced in Star Realms. I think the cards that they tended to take a little more criticism for came in promo sets that really weren't intended for competitive play. Things like the Arc. So kind of going.
Oh my God! The
yeah.
Arc.
So So it's kind of
Oh,
switching over, Epic. I do again. I think it carries over that from Star Realms in that it is incredibly balanced. I think there are some cards that maybe they were questioning. Some of those got reprinted in Pantheon with some slight tweaks. An example is Teleport. Um, so no, I think really both initial offerings, especially, are exceptionally balanced. I don't really feel like we can, um, put one over the other. Um, I think that's all, of course, subjective. It sounds like maybe you have a different opinion on that base set than I do.
well, no, the only reason I have such a different opinion is the Board Game Geek forums when they ran tournaments. I got into gold, or is it platinum? Platinum tier. Anyway, when it was one of the top tiers, you had to play base set. Meanwhile, with my preferences, I literally did not want to play base set any other time because of how ridiculous Freighter starts were and Brain World were. I look at Epic, and we will, all three of us will definitely talk about our experience in constructed everything else. I don't feel Epic has turn two, I've already wrapped this game up. Now, mind you, you put down a steel golem in Epic with Blitz turn one. Life's not great, but you're not done. You might be done because you kept a questionable hand. Your mulligans weren't great, but you can usually you can pick that game back up, and 13 points out of 30 isn't bad. Whereas a freighter on turn two, when your opponent had no chance whatsoever because the hand size different in Star Realms, which I'm not saying is unfair, and I know you guys had that debate probably like 3 times about going first, going second, which one's better. In Epic, I feel so many things between the rules, deck construction, especially that 2-to-1 ratio, I think is absolutely one of the best balances in a game I've seen. There are so many things that feel like, because this is second gen from the original Epic, you look at, say, Colony Wars from Star Realms, and I do feel Colony Wars is a little watered down. If they let off with Colony Wars versus base set, Star Realms wouldn't even be on the map. It absolutely would not. The base set had these explosive plays. Hey, I got Blob World. Hey, I got Brain World. I got oh my God, what was the name of that freaking flagship? You know the one I'm talking about from Command Ship. There we go.
Sure.
Well, I'm just saying, but like, how many the 8 cost cards in Star Realms were backbreaking. You were like, oh my God, I played this. I feel like I'm so far ahead. Your opponent had 1 or 2 turns tops to recover, but then you look at Epic, and I think it really speaks to the fact that there's only actually 4 types of cards. You have champions, you have events. Then you have both a 1 gold version and a free version. So as far as like a Punnett square, there's only actually 4 types of cards. And then if you want to branch out to 16 because of factions, whatever. No, while factions have their own identity, there is no strategy where you go, man, I can't believe an all sage deck with 9 evil cards is winning yet again. And I mean, our episode 2 of is Wild Sage, broken. Overall, it's not, but it's one of those things where you have to admit it's one of the jumping off points where you go, hey, I can do this deck with an intermediate skill level and still be advanced skill because my cards synergize a little bit better. But with Star Realms, because it is a deck building game, like you said about being a different genre, sometimes the randomness of Star Realms can absolutely kill you. I'm sure you had games, and I know I've had games where no one makes a legitimate purchase till like turn 5 because the entire row was just clogged up with unaffordable stuff, and so that game degenerates. In Epic, between the Mulligan rule and everything else, this game doesn't stall, and as opposed to Magic the Gathering, where you have this ramping up. In Epic, you are valid and you're a threat from turn 1. No, I don't know many more games where you can scare someone with a turn 1 play.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think this is why, even comparing the two is kind of rough. Really, their only real thing in common is White Wizard Games. The design and balance for things that you're sort of selecting out of a trade row to come around, versus, like you point out, Epic, everything is deliberate and tactical, and it is back and forth. It is a big game of chicken, And the cards are overpowered for the sake of being
Of being
overpowered.
awesome. For the
Really
sake of being awesome.
So yeah, I'm so happy you guys are enthusiastic about it. I've been streaming. That's been a lot of fun. So you guys have had a really great start. I just want to comment on a couple of great discussions you guys have had. You guys did discuss, of course, the random 30 format. We'll touch on briefly.
Even though you hate it.
No, I don't hate random 30. I enjoy it. What I did kind of point out is that it is an interesting format, non-format. The experienced players kind of roll their eyes a little bit at random 30. The preferred, the limited format that we really do like is not one that they have a queue for. It's the one where they give you 60 cards and you select 30. That is featured more in the arena right now.
Well, actually, exclusively in Arena. It's not featured in the free version. Well,
correct. I mean, there is. They do run that in face-to-face tournaments as well. I know those aren't happening a ton right now, but that is a format that carries over, and it's a ton of fun. It's great. It's fantastic.
Oh, it is. I also know that I'm bad at it.
Well, and it's something you'll just certainly get better with over time.
You're too great. I'm not going to.
The random 30, in one sense, there is that balance in that the potential, we are both subject to the same card pool. What is not really as balanced in random 30 is your individual 5 cards that you're going to get. It's very possible that one of you is slated significantly far behind the other. One might have a ton of draw and a couple loyalties set up. The other might be looking at really just trying to gather enough to make or prevent one big attack wave. And they have to really regroup and spend several possible gold drawing in to cards while they're being attacked. And there's not much you can do about that in random 30, whereas at least you can kind of pin it on your drafting choices or constructed choices in the other formats, and of course in the pick 30, your selections. And so I don't want to discount random 30. It is absolutely a good place for you guys to start, because for new players, it's a great place to start.
Specifically me and you, Brandon. He literally singled us out.
I meant as a podcast, I think it's a good place to start, because that is where a lot of people who have checked out the game and decided I want to try to learn it, they do feel most comfortable in that they might have a chance, and that's valid.
I am not disagreeing with you in the slightest. I'm actually going to, you've heard our one episode where we're talking about random 30s, and we just go on and on and on. One of the things two things. One, you can't see your deck, which is both terrifying and exciting. It truly reminds me of you. We were talking before the episode about the original Magic the Gathering release, and I'm trying to restrict how much I bring about that. But pre-internet, when Magic the Gathering's out, people truly did not know which cards were in the game. They didn't know what cards were good. They were trying to figure it out. You couldn't buy singles. You couldn't, the game was just this enigma, and it was terrifying. It was exciting when you won some games based off a card that only one person in your entire group had a single copy of. It was absolutely amazing.
You're playing with what you have.
You're playing blind. It's like going to a country where you don't speak the language and they're playing blackjack, and you're just going, I'm not sure what this signal is for pass, but I'm going to tell you by covering my cards, I don't want any more.
No, I want all of it, actually.
Yeah, can you just give me... we're playing 250, right? But the second part of random 30, and it's why I truly have come to this game, there are multiple tiers of skill level. In random 30, if you're really good at it, you will never have a 100% record. I will not say that. That Juan Gould player that's out there and has the top lifetime record for random drop, I'm number 4, just saying. But anyway, so you can actually apply heavy skill into baiting your opponent into paying a gold, into making stupid blocks. You still can apply high skill to random 30s. Now, that's just true of the game. And with how many formats this game offers versus Star Realm. Star Realm is only really offered, real-time versus, asynchronous play. And you look at Epic, not only do you have both real-time and asynchronous play, you're given 3 formats you can jump into, plus the rotating arena. I mean, that is way more game for free than I was ever expecting. I was very pleasantly surprised when they let us have this game for free, not in the shilling mode, but just truly, I did not expect something of this level to be free. Now, as far as a business model, it makes sense. They need people playing their game. Okay, cool. But we are seeing some people who are adapting to it, and their names are rising to the top. You can see some people I play all the time, and I'm like, I might be 50-50. Some people I'm 80-20, and I can definitely tell certain players in certain formats. I'm like, I don't really stand a chance in this format, but whatever.
No, I think you bring up a good point, and maybe this is a good time to kind of talk about the skill levels and sort of seeing. There is somewhat of a curve, and you will be able to tell.
It's a very voluptuous curve. Let's put it that way.
And yes, when there is a player who is experienced and they understand the game and the windows and they understand the baiting, and if you're at this point still relatively new, you're still learning how the app works, it's going to feel like that player always has more answers and more cards and more attack waves than you. And it's just because the experience there, it means a lot more in Epic than it does, say, in Star Realms, where you can kind of roll onto the app and maybe beat some of the top players really early on. That's really not quite as easy in Epic. Everything is much more deliberate, and you're not really relying on something like a shuffle.
But to dovetail off that also means that if you invest the time, the rewards, in my opinion, are better for Epic, because the players that are doing really well are the players that play a lot in their specific formats. If anyone goes on and they check lifetime records for the 3 different formats, the random 30s, the dark draft, as well as construct, if you prefer a certain format, keep playing it. And it still has a Star Realms promotion. Once you hit a level, you can't go below that level. So once you hit level 7, you can never go back to level 6. That part's always awesome. But you might not jump out of level 7 for, say, a month. But once you, once you jump to level 8 or whatever, your skill level should be so much more impressive. You might have trouble finding games just based off how many players are playing, but you learning and moving on, those skills always stay with you. Whereas in Star Realms, there are times we all can blame, the market row showed up, it just favored my opponent, it happened. In Epic, many times, even random 30s, you, from turn 0, you still determine your mulligan. So there's never a time where you're out of control and there's no salvation. You determine your mulligan. Unless you're pitching literally all 5 cards, which I've never seen anyone do, unless you're pitching a full grip of 5, you get to make the decision for how this game plays out based off of what you're seeing. You're never blind. You never are playing cards with no information. You always, at some point, have to apply, I guess, speculation, but also your skill level, your expectations for the game. So even though random 30s may be one of the most, truly is random, you still have to apply skill from your starting hand. Do you pitch cards that need a bunch of loyalty, or do you gamble and say, I might draw into the cards that make this thing work? Evaluating cards, evaluating plays, evaluating time. I mean, you could lose your mind if you want to try and make the optimum play. So thankfully, we have a chess clock.
Yeah, no, great points, and props to White Wizard for extending that. I'm seeing far less timeouts.
Most of my wins were because of that 15-minute window. Are you kidding me? I wouldn't have made the levels I made if it wasn't for that 15-minute window.
Best window they ever made.
Are you kidding me? Can we make a 10-minute window? Let's play faster. Let's go.
Well, you want like a super aggressive mode?
Oh, yeah, and I'm just going to play Kark.
How fast can I play
all
Kark?
day, every day.
So yeah, I did enjoy that discussion on Random 30. I also enjoyed your discussion on Wild Sage. And again, kind of pointing back to sort of skill levels. It eventually does come down, I think, a little more to the player involved. Uh, the deck itself is certainly going to come into play. Obviously, the choices that the player makes are all important, but it may not. If a player is brand new, they're coming in and they're really just sort of testing out the game, seeing if they like it. And maybe by the time they throw together a constructed deck, they've probably been around for a little bit. They've decided to put at least that much time to figure it out how to build a deck. At that point, they're still relatively green, and they may be playing something Wild Sage. I might be playing something completely experimental, but that experience differential is going to mean far more than the deck choice. Even if that's a deck that perhaps I might turn around and beat tournament players with.
Ironically, that actually brings me to literally the subject I want to bring you up on is the expected meta, because Brandon and I were talking in actually the last episode, which I think at this point was like 2-3 days ago in physical time. I have seen no less than 3 different names playing this token-based good deck with Sage backup, and I swear I did not see it before you and I played. So either you've been beating the tail off of a bunch of players, and they're like, hey, this clearly works. Meanwhile, they don't know who you are. It sucks for them. But, well, it's one thing. If you see certain names, you're like, oh, this is going to hurt. And then I was telling Brandon, hey, I haven't seen this dragon deck in forever. I played it 3 times in the last 24 hours. I'm like, do they listen and just not tell me because they're like, oh, you don't think you see the dragon deck here? So most of my information, and for anyone who's listened for a long time, by that I mean 3 weeks, if you've listened, I keep referring back to tomsepicgaming.com. Now, he switched from the blog into doing streaming and everything else, which you did. But before that was a lot of write-ups. He even did the cheap way of doing it of, hey, here's a picture of my deck. And I'm like, you know what? I actually appreciate that because I'll save that to my tablet and go back to it. But the 2016 meta, which is pre-Pantheon, which is this is literally the meta we have now, which is post the bans on Kark and, before Pantheon, whenever we get that. But I see all these lists, and I've tried some of these top-placing lists, and I'm like, oh, man, this version got first in this event. This version got first in this event. And I'm not doing that great. Some of it is part of me as a player, but this is why Matt, quote-unquote, TheCutter Newberg, is here, because I would like him to explain how my expectations for a meta are actually wrong.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me is simply what you're looking for online at that time is a meta of experienced tournament players. And those are players who can properly pilot decks of that caliber, and they understand their strengths and weaknesses against other tournament-worthy decks designed and piloted by tournament players. So what we have right now is a brand new app filled with players who really, this is their absolute first look at Epic. So not only they're not aware of any sort of meta, several years ago before this game really existed in their minds, and they're just trying to kind of figure out with what they have what they like. And right now, I understand that it is of course natural as someone putting out content for the game to explore and say what is the meta. Quite simply, it's too much in a nebula right now. It's all forming. What's going to be nice is you guys are going to be in a position to help observe and help point out what will, over the next, I'm predicting 3 to 4 months, perhaps become a meta. But in the meantime, it's kind of people just figuring out what they like and trying things out and drawing from the things that they see work against them and in turn then work well for them.
So actually, Brandon, you're actually in the best position to expound upon this. You know my position. Matt's just explained his. What is your opinion when you play constructed? Do you feel like anything is forming? Do you feel like people have opinions, or that no one has an opinion? Like what is your opinion of when you play constructed?
A majority of constructed that I've ran into either feels that you're overwhelmed in a idea that the person you're playing is either really skilled or that you're at the same parity level and there's no in between. Like there's no slightly better than you. It either feels that they're a mile ahead of you or that there's nothing really different. You're just sitting there trying to figure out, okay, we're about on parity. If that makes any sense.
No, it does. To give a very quick summation, Samurai Warfare has three outcomes. You're victorious, you kill your opponent. Your opponent's victorious, they kill you. Or you're at parity, you kill each other. Now, obviously, that's not very pleasant to think about, but that also means why people had to train harder and everything else, because only one out of those three outcomes had you lived. And that's not even discussing being wounded, everything else, and obviously that doesn't actually apply to our game. But technically, that means only 1 in 3 outcomes, which is you're miles ahead of your opponent, is instantaneous. The other ones, you do have to grind, you do have to fight. You might win with only 1 point of health. You might win with only 30 seconds on the clock. And I've done all of those things. I've also lost to all of those. For this constructed meta, what I find the most interesting is when I get these games to fire off, so many times I see these waves. So clearly, some of these people are playing a lot, myself included, and you see the influence. So many people who, I don't know, Brandon, how many deck slots do you have? Because obviously I had the Kickstarter thing, so I came with 8 deck slots. Do you know how many deck slots you're allowed?
I'm guessing that it's 4, as I only have 3 currently
Okay.
built and I haven't tried to go beyond that.
All right. Well, so let's just assume that the standard off the shelf player gets 4. Matt, do you know any different than I do? Do you know if it's 4 8
No, I'm pulling
automatically?
open. I'm pulling open mine right. I mean, I think some of mine carried over from the alpha. I think I've got something like 12 or something.
Well, then
Um,
you actually had more than me. I bought my 9 through 12. I had 8 starting fresh, and I was a Kickstarter backer, so I typed in the code. They boot. I got my gems, everything else. So let's just assume the average player has 4, just for the sake of this discussion. 4 decks that obviously you can delete and then re-upload. You can actually save and export, import decks. Let me tell you how awesome that feature is. I know it's a small touch, but being able to actually, you could just export them to a note file on your Android or whatever. You can still technically save your deck. So even if you only have 4, your decks aren't gone. That part. But assuming you only have, you pick the 4 decks you run into, you are inspired by whatever. I have seen these waves where, like 2 weeks ago, and this is the last week of March 2020. I ran into Shadow Imp decks all the time. One, I was actually happy because they weren't wild, but I've not seen another Shadow Imp deck this week. I've run into Dragons 3 times. I have not run into an Army of the Apocalypse deck this week. I've run into Kark, but only from one person. I've played Kark a ton. I've not run into any good evil decks. Obviously there are technically only so many archetypes. It's way more than anyone off the bat. But I seem to see these trends like, oh, I got beat by this, so I'm going to play this. I'm going to understand. But with only 4, assuming 4 slots, it might be 8. I truly don't know. It seems like people are trying something, but it really feels like there's almost like a weekly meta amongst the free range constructed, which is both cool but also completely unpredictable, as Matt was talking about. So Matt, you said you did say that we don't have a meta yet.
yeah,
Do you
that's
feel like
really
we're actually going to have one? Do you feel like we're actually going to have one?
I do. I think it's going to take really a couple of steps. I think it's going to, number one, take a few months here while people really learn the game, learn what they like, learn how to win with what they like. And then 2, it's going to take content coming out like what you guys are providing, where people can come on and say, look, this, you're seeing it a lot. Here's what works for me. I think this is a real strong piece of today's meta. I think if I were to uh, observe what I've seen so far, it is a lot of what you guys are seeing. I think there is a fair amount of blue green. That's great. You guys had a good discussion there as well. I'm going to answer. I don't think it's overpowered. I think that you do lack a couple of things by staying in blue green and not allowing yourself, say, life gain. That could be a real problem. So there are certainly pros and cons, but again, I think it really does come down to who's playing it and if there is a differential in skill there. I feel like if it's two tournament level players, it's really going to come down to their play and less about the deck being overpowered. Again, Epic, they're trying. All the cards are overpowered, so in theory, really all decks should be overpowered. I do think the balance has kept it very good to this point, though.
Well, you were saying about all cards are overpowered. Now, what's interesting if you actually break down the phrasing of that, if everything's overpowered, then everything technically is balanced. Like if you go, I'm going to be really old for a second. There was a Darkwing Duck episode. We're talking like 94, 93, with this whole thing where he's a self-proclaimed superhero like Batman, but he ends up going to the superhero world. Well, in that superhero world where everyone has powers, he was valued because he didn't have power. You look at the decks here, Kark can be beaten by certain things. Wild Sage can be beat by certain things, etc., etc., etc. It may feel overpowered if you come in with the expectations of other games, Magic the Gathering, Star Realms, Ascension. I'm trying to think, Hearthstone. But this has its own metagame. You do need to adjust your mindset. Once you do, there is a rock, paper, scissors breakdown of how things go, but it can be overcome by good or bad mulligans. It can be overcome by reaction versus proactive play. What you're saying about skill level is a big factor, and it's recognizing when you need to be the aggressor, when you need to be the reactor. So what do you think, Matt? And then we'll pass over to Brandon. Do you think being the aggressor or the reactor, obviously one being you put down the threat, say, hey, quote unquote, answer me, or do you like saying, I'm going to wait for you to make a mistake, then I'm going to mess you over? Which one of those do you feel suits you? I'm not going to ask which one's better. Which one suits you?
Boy, it's so deck to deck. I think it's really recognizing what I sometimes say on my stream when people will bring up things like Magic. I'll say that having experience with games like Magic, where you do learn keywords and timing bubbles and things like that, is very helpful in learning Epic.
But then it screws you over in gameplay.
it's really skills that you have to hone and acquire and be good at for poker that help you win in Epic. So it's recognizing minute to minute when you sort of need to go all in and be aggressive. In terms of, say, deck style, do I prefer something more control based, or do I control something that's more on the nose?
What do you prefer? Like, don't get me wrong. I know any of us can answer either side. Do you like being the person threatening, or do you like being the person basically doing judo and aikido throws where you're like, look, I'm going to wait for you to come to me, and then I'm going to wreck you? Or do you like being the person who literally puts it all on the table and says, if you don't have an answer, you're dead now? Which one of those suits you as a player?
I would say probably more the aggressor. I think I'm mostly a blue-green, maybe with a little bit of red. And there are certainly control or passive types of builds you can do with those combinations, but no, I love leading out with things like juggernauts, and even things like three-horn lizards. Things coming out first turn, I won't always check pass, and I think that I do enjoy doing that, and maybe that speaks to what you're asking.
No, it does. So, Brandon, how about you? Do you like being the aggressor, or do you like being the reactor? Because technically, there is no third option, and there is no wrong answer. Well, so for anyone who ends up listening to this, there is no wrong answer, but you do need to understand that A, it's flexible. You do have to choose your timing on those, but B, you have to know both mindsets. To be a great reactionary player, you have to understand the aggressor. To be a great aggressor, you have to understand what answers they could pose you and show a little restraint. Because if you go down to 0 cards and they're still at 4 cards, you're going to lose basically regardless.
No, to me, it definitely feels that as, let's say, a newer player coming in where I haven't been playing as much and getting as experienced as you guys currently are, uh, being in an aggressive manner gets you more of the idea of learning what kind of reactions other players may have in their deck. Especially when you're talking about constructed, where you may not know the kind of cards that they're playing, what deck they're currently running, even what archetype they're trying to follow. It gives you more of an opportunity to feel that you're in a successful position and that you are going to make a difference. So being in that aggressive mindset of let's play, let's try to push the limits of what we can do, but also understanding that you don't want to overextend, which is kind of hard to explain until you've done it a couple of times and you've hit into that rock where you're like, well, that was a well-timed card. Thanks for the game. And then maybe playing it out and seeing if it goes any further, or just saying, hey, I lost. And then conceding and realizing that let's move into the next game and keep that mindset and keep moving forward with it.
So does that mean for right now you like being aggressive?
Definitely.
I hear that sentiment. It is rough when they say wipe your attack with a 0, like a wither, and then they thought pluck you, and you're just like, oh my god, now what?
Well, I will actually say, coming from Magic and everything else, I don't truly like being defensive. I don't like being reactionary. From playing this wide open meta that has yet to be defined, I have come to appreciate more and more actually being the reactionary. Now, that's not just to contradict being aggressive. I do like going, oh, blitz, 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 you're dead, we're done. I do like that. But from playing Atlanta's build of Kark, and I really should check which month it was, but it was a 2019 build. I really like waiting for you to spend your gold. Then I spend my gold, and it doesn't trump you, but it increases my agenda. It lets me inch forward, very slowly until there's no way you can win. I like tightening the vice one little spin, then seeing how much you squirm, then spinning a little more, then seeing how you squirm. Because oh, I'm going to drop all these blitz creatures. I go, well, one of my cards takes out 3 of yours. I kind of win. You spent 3 gold, I spent 1. I like, coming up with this narrative where it's like, oh, you put in all this effort. That's not worth anything, and go to the curb. That's. I guess you could say it's sadistic, just because I like that feeling of power that comes from knowing better timing, but also knowing that I have left them no chance but to ask for more rope before they hang themselves, which is a very morbid thought. I'm not putting it beyond that. I understand it's a very dark place to go, but I also like knowing that I've evolved as a player since the beginning, which was, oh, I'm going to put down these blitz and I'm going to blow up the world, and then I'm going to put down blitz and blow up the world. But now you have to earn every inch. And when you earn every inch, you actually get that satisfaction of basically saying, I crafted this. This game is mine. You just don't know it yet, which is, again, also very dark and weird.
No, these are great points, and I think the way that you can kind of gauge where you are, and it's tough saying as a player. I still think it's very situational, but if you're willing to say one degree of noting aggression is perhaps your willingness to spend your 1 first before your opponent. And I think it's important to recognize when you need to do that and when you can do that. But ultimately, I do agree with what you said there. If you are the player who spends their gold latest each turn on average, I do believe that is going to give you enough edge to win, because you have the patience to wait for the most amount of information available at the time you make your most crucial decision in the turn. And so
It does, and Oh, I'm sorry. Finish your thought. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, no, that's really it. I mean, I think that it's important to recognize when you need to be aggressive, but that patience to hold it off and to really wait for those key windows. And like you said, send out the threats, inch it out there, bait them a little bit, and boom. Now you might have information that says even though they have their one, and you feel comfortable to go ahead and spend yours.
Well, all right. So I'm going to start with Brandon. I'm going to move to Matt because I feel like I'm the smartest person in the room, which we all know. What do you think is one of the, I guess, one of the greatest cards for constructed? Because I mean, I'm obviously I'm very slowly inching this out because I'm going to have this answer. And you'll be like, oh well, for the question you're asking, here's the best answer. What do you think is one of the best cards we have available in the app right now? So, Brandon, since you're going to lose this discussion out of the way, why don't you go first?
One of the most interesting cards, I won't say the best, is going to end up being Kong to me, with its ability to not only
Be
reach
awesome.
parity, it's not a parity card. It's generally going to be more than parity because you're killing probably a gold based creature, almost any creature that is going to be in constructed. Plus, it's going to require a gold on their end to get rid of in almost every situation,
Overall, yes.
other
Because the
than
best
being
they can do at
bounced.
zero is bounce it. That's the best they can do on zero is bounce it.
Which then gives it you back. So then you're talking, okay, I just spent 2 gold to get rid of 3 gold technically, and a card out of your
Yes.
hand. When we're talking about card equality,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean,
you might
so
be able to feeding frenzy it if it's already damaged. That's one other possible zero kill I can think of.
well, but feeding friends only works on your turn though.
Yes, that is
That
true.
well, I'm just saying like that's the caveat. Versus if you attack him with a Kong, I can use hasty retreat, or if it's on my turn, I can use vanishing. I understand we are technically limited by like the however many cards we have in the but there aren't many straight out zero answers. There aren't, you could argue, is it Thrashing Demon, the one that whenever it deals damage to a creature, that
Oh,
creature
sure.
explodes?
Yeah, someone
Yeah.
might be dumb enough to block with it.
Well, or they might be enough life where you're like, hey, block this or die, your choice.
Yeah, and then again, the thing that demon might be big at that point.
Well, no, even if you're at 3, it attacks as a 1/1 and becomes like a 3/3. So because unlike the vampire gets its tokens for dealing damage, the demon gets it for attacking. So it's a weird little like similar but different thing. So Matt, what is your what fine. What card would you think is a very nice highlight since Brandon apparently changed the question?
No, it's out. Kong was a good. I like that as well. That's a great choice for me. I think I'm going to start off. I mentioned it already. The Juggernaut. I think right now players are coming in and seeing a lot of players check pass, and they're a little confused. What is this game? A lot of games start off and seem to kind of have a build up. There are cards where you can lead and you can feel confident doing so. If you've got the loyalty, the Juggernaut is a tremendous value. You're really getting four upgrades on a champion. You're getting the Blitz, you're getting Unbreakable stock out the gate. It's got Breakthrough, which Breakthrough is something that will take a little bit for some players to understand kind of how that mechanic works.
Yeah, but
But
Breakthrough and Blitz together are pretty awesome.
amazing. And then if you have the loyalty, you get the card. This is a card that's probably going to deal some damage when you attack with it first turn most of the time. Certainly, it can be susceptible to bounce or banish, but if they're going to banish it, they're going to have to spend one and bounce. Okay, you just do it again next turn. Not all that.
All right, so you guys ready for me to cheat?
Yeah,
You're sitting down. Surprise attack.
love
It
it.
breaks the game. It breaks the game. The same way. So I keep referencing a card that I don't think will ever be in the app, and for good reason. Blind Faith. Blind Faith is a zero good free event with recycle, and it basically says all champions lose all ability. Well, the reason champions have abilities is so you can use said abilities. So that breaks the game. So that card got banned because of Kark and everything else. But I think it was eventually going to get banned either way. Now, surprise attack. says if I still have my 1 gold, not only does the card replace itself, I can play whatever champion is in my hand on your turn. It grants ambush to non-ambush cards. There are Xanos builds, there are some Kark builds, mostly Xanos builds, that will splash wild just for surprise attack. Because it lets you, whenever you randomly draw it or whatever, it lets you play the game on their turn. It lets you take aggression and put it defensively. Defensively, put it on at the end of their turn. Put in Kark at the end of their turn and win just because you can. Surprise attack is fair because it does cost a gold. You need to have the creature in hand or blind draw it. So again, fair. But it actually lets you go outside of the game. It takes the timing of the game and turns it completely sideways. Now, yes, it doesn't fit in every deck. It doesn't make every deck better. You still, there are a bunch of mitigating factors. I like it simply because it's a fair way to break the game for a single gold, but obviously it's only 1 card. It's like, you're not, like, if I surprise attack a Juggernaut on your turn, Juggernaut still explodes. But if I surprise attack, say, a Kong or a Blood Drinker, and, we clear the board somehow or whatever, it just lets you do things you're not supposed to do in a fair way. So I kind of like that. It's like, you're playing Rochambeau and you say, hey, look over there. That's kind of like the little distractor, in my opinion. So, again, cheating, but I also like winning discussions, so it happens.
No, I love it. Surprise attack and Kong together, especially. That's one of the things you learn early on in the game, and that's a great answer. Love it.
You heard him say it. It was a great answer. Oh.
Well, it
Put
also,
that one down.
you have to be built around surprise attack to make it effective. It isn't necessarily that you draw a card and it finishes the game.
No, you actually don't. And
so if you draw in and you have surprise attack with a hand that has 4 cards but no creatures in it or no champions in it, it's worthless.
No, correct. However, surprise attacking, I'd say 50% of champions in the game get so much better when they have ambush. Sea Titan, oh, you attacked me. By the way, I'm putting an 11-14 untargetable and bouncing your 1 gold attacker. That one's pretty good. Obviously, I mean, I know I'm cherry picking results here. Xanos, I can make an army out of nowhere in your turn. Pass, oh, goes the mine. I have an army. You lose. Put in Veldin. I can, use the loyalty and bounce. Because this game doesn't have a resource restriction, it has a deck construction restriction, it doesn't have a resource restriction. So I can put in surprise attack to any deck. It literally does not matter. As long as I keep the card count to 60, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no,
now,
I think...
Does it get better if I build for it? Yeah.
I, for the most part, agree with you. I do think there are times where I have ended up pulling it out only because the majority of my creatures already have ambush. Yeah. If I'm stocked with Strafers and Draka's Enforcers and Pyromancers and Medusa, stuff like that, I may decide to use that slot for another champion or some more control, maybe some draw. So I think it is, obviously, yeah, you need to kind of decide if it fits not only the deck, but the tools, the creatures that you're running, and being able to drop non-ambushy stuff on your opponent's turn and also during attack bubbles. That's another huge advantage of surprise attack that we haven't even mentioned yet. You might end up finding tremendous uses during attack events on your own turn. Say with the Frost Giant, tap down your opponent's blockers that they just
make
put
it
out.
a nice strike.
Like
yeah.
Really, really nice effects with the surprise attack there.
Well, with surprise attack, and we'll dovetail this for 5 seconds into, I want to say, deck defining cards. I don't think surprise attack defines a deck. It makes whatever deck it goes into slightly better. But Kark defines a deck. Xanos defines a deck. And I would love to say all Loyalty X define decks, but they don't. Is it Scaros, the Loyalty X Hound? Is it Scaros? Anyway,
yeah, green.
Yeah, but so they define decks because you want a maximum of Loyalty X, but at the same time there are 3 and 4-color control decks that Surprise Attack just fits in because you want to give Sea Titan, surprise, or you want to give Blood Drinker surprise so you can get one attack in or take advantage of that window. Surprise Attack, I don't think defines a deck. More often than not, Surprise Attack is not an aggressive card. It's either mid-range, which will be the flexible decks, the ones that don't try to win automatically, but at the same time have both plays on your turn and your opponent's turn, but also control decks, which typically only make major plays on your opponent's turn. And if they're playing on their turn, they're probably playing draw twos, or they're playing the very limited board clears like Divine Judgment and a pop. I understand that's very broad, but Control seems to want to make the big play on your opponent's turn to punish them for spending their gold first. Mid-range is flexible in how things go, and aggressive seems to want to make the big plays on your own turn because of blitz, because of timing, and those sorts of things. Those are my opinions, but that seems to be how the metagame shakes out, in my theory.
Absolutely, guys.
I didn't know. I mean, sure, that's a thing too.
I didn't know if you guys wanted to go over the hour, or if you guys wanted to keep going.
Oh, I'm fine with going.
I have nothing better to do with my life than talk about a free app.
Well, that's what happens when you're single or fathers. And
you
you're
should
stuck
hear
in
my
quarantine.
entire tirade on MS Paint. It's pretty good. It's 4 hours.
Don't worry, it's not getting spliced in here.
Oh yes, it is. So anyway, so since we have Matt, quote unquote, the Cutter Newberg, I probably should say quote one. Literally. So if I put the gun to your head, pick a subject that you feel, I shouldn't say you feel qualified, you feel that should get out there. I understand that's a lot of pressure. Literally go with your gut reaction, because if we prove anything from my low SAT scores, it's go with your gut reaction.
A subject that I think should get out there. About Epic?
Please say MS Paint.
About Epic, or are you talking outside of Epic? What do you want?
Let's go with MS Paint. I don't know. No, yes. Literally anything you think applies to terribly epic dads. I don't know.
So really, I want to speak to new players. I think if you found this, awesome. That means you've already found the interest to kind of stick with it. That sticking with it and playing with players that beat you over time is what is going to advance you. I understand that's hard, and believe me, in Star Realms, I can kind of roll losses off. This happened, that happened. It's sometimes a little harder to swallow an epic loss. You feel more invested. You feel like you've made good decisions, and somehow they turn on you anyway. And it can be rough. And as a very competitive guy, it was rough. I had a little bit earlier access to the app than the Kickstarter, which has its pros and cons. I got started early, and that has very much helped my development today. But it was very humbling. At that time, the only people with access were effectively white wizards, their friends, which are magic pros.
Yeah, I mean, they got a ridiculous team. I mean, if I have to say nothing else, they have their resumes make me tremble.
Yeah, so I, as a guy that, again, I consider myself, very competitive. At one point, I kind of just look back in the app and see I lost the last 14 straight. And I'm just kind of like, man, this is hard. I'm not sure if I'm getting this. And a couple of people that I played regularly at the time, Darwin included, was nice enough to say, listen, I know this is tough and it kind of hurts right now, but trust me, you are gaining invaluable experience. This is going to make you good so much faster. And that's really
why you're the number one constructed player, is because he gave you the pep talk?
No, I'm going to correct you right there. The only reason I don't consider myself by any means the top constructed player. I currently have that, I'm a volume player. There are certain
he has
players.
Bouncy hair, and he can prove it.
Yeah, I play a lot, and I have good experience. And there's a lot of newer players in the app right now, and my volume play reflects that. And there are certainly lots of players that beat the pants off me regularly. And if they played at the volume that I did, and some of them even do play at a pretty high volume, but in other queues, say in arena and things like that. But it's because I just don't stop playing. I'm a true addict. So finishing that, really, guys, stick to it. Play with the players that beat you. You want to be playing with players that understand the app and the timing windows and the waves and sort of how you're going to fall victim to them, but you're going to learn from it and you're going to see how it works. You're going to see the cards that really do give you a hard time, and you're going to learn how to do that to the players that are now a little bit less experienced than you, and you're going to see all the tricks that worked on you for a while starting to turn around, and now you can start having those dominant wins. And it takes a while, but you will get there if you put the time in.
All right, Brandon, rebuttal? Tell me he's wrong.
No, he's definitely not wrong in that aspect. And the biggest part I can say is that I feel like the game needs a few things to make you feel more engaged in certain ways. And I feel like the conversation needs to go in which ways can the app be improved. And part of that.
Honestly, I'm
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I'm going to interrupt you and I'll let you finish. I think where you're going with this is the right answer. I think your method's wrong. Continue being wrong. Keep going.
No, a part of it is let's say you are playing those people that are significantly further advanced than you. There
Yeah, Matt
isn't
the Garden Newberg, yes.
necessarily a good way for those players to reach out and hit that person up and say, "Is there any way that I can learn from you?" And it's kind of like a mentoring kind of program. It isn't there. And granted, you could maybe go down the route of, okay, I got on the Reddit forum or I got on the Discord, and maybe that person's there, or maybe somebody's going to be helpful and kind of Sherpa me along in this journey. But there isn't necessarily a way for you to get there and feel comfortable.
Well, I think so. What you're mentioning, I think the solution, the linchpin of your discussion, is wrong. The overall blanket is correct. Yes, we need help, but it's not the app. It's the
No,
community.
the app definitely needs to have some way. Like, even if you had like a small chat, if it never even got used, but you could maybe send that
Oh, I'm
message
I'm
and
I'm
say,
telling
hey,
you
there's an
now. No,
improvement that may work.
God, no. I do not want to chat in this. No, I know
You
that
may
seems very
not
mean.
want it and you may never use it, but it not
No, but
being there as a
it's
feature.
more adding that is a bigger headache than the solution. A true community support, whether Facebook, Discord, whatever, and Matt will. I know he knows the answers. I truly don't. But you have a community out of game so that you don't sully up the game with possible bots, with possible spam and everything else, but also the headaches of maintaining, regulating everything else. You need people who can help you, but you don't need it clogging up the app. That is my opinion, obviously. But we need the community to kind of nurture and push everything forward. And right now, we have a split between the paper players who are getting a new expansion this year, which looks ridiculous, and I'm actually really excited for it, whenever it hits the app. But you have the paper players who, depending on their area, are actually getting games. And then you have the app who both are for seasoned players who have access to the app or for players who don't know what Epic is. And we're having this weird clash of cultures, again, in my opinion. But so if we had a more communal area, because eventually Mega Holland got mentioned in the app. It had like every one of every 5 screens was listen to Mega Holland, and things got fixed. Well, theoretically, but at the very least, it had a mention of here's the community. Go talk to the community. Stop being a headache. Go talk to the community. Go away. Like any true dad would tell you, go ask your mother.
Yeah, no, I think these are great points, guys. I understand, absolutely understand that some people desire to have a way to communicate with your opponent. I don't think that's going to happen, and the reason that I say
God,
that
no.
the reason I say that is they never implemented it in Star Realms, and further, if Rob Doherty ever implemented it in Ascension, it was after I think he was involved. I don't think they ever had it there either. It's not something that they seem to want to do as a company within their digital products. So
Well, I
that
don't
being
feel like it
said,
makes it better. That's my opinion. I apologize for injecting myself, but that just is
no,
like I'm
I
actually
think if they pulled
very
all the
vehement. I don't think it makes it better.
yeah, if they pulled most of the experienced and addictive players, I think you would find that overwhelmingly they would say they would prefer not. But that being said, that is number one. You guys have already started this process by introducing new content where you guys will do the things we talked about, observe as a meta develops, talk about different play levels and where pitfalls are for mistakes for players, things like that. You guys are the start to what you're looking for, Brandon, and that's awesome. And let's just remember that we're about 3 weeks into this. At the start of things like Magic, 3 weeks in, you didn't really have resources to help for meta. Even if we had online at that point, there just wasn't the experience, and that's just kind of where we're at right now. It's going to come, and it's going to come through community. There are two epic Facebook community pages up right now. There's also a Discord. Also, you pointed out there are several of us streaming. Tom Sorensen, myself as well. You guys also streaming. So I think we're at the start of it. I think we've got the seeds planted, and it's great that you want it because that means other people want it, and you guys are also going the next step and providing it.
Well, we're there. I'm not sure how much effort we're actually, really resolved. But so with where the game is, obviously, technically, we're behind the ball as far as paper. Now, Star Realms was no different. I almost used the phrase "no better," but that's actually not. That's actually a misnomer. We're about technically 2 or 3 years behind where paper is. But to be fair, paper only has 2 expansions, and the one isn't even released yet. They have Pantheon and they have Jungle coming up. Do you feel like that gap in paper and digital is for the better or not? And I know these are all loaded questions, but I'm bad at life. So
I don't know if there's a better. It's where it is. Unfortunately, comparing the two isn't really fair. Star Realms is a worldwide success on paper, with or without an app. It's printed in 8 languages at least. It is a huge, ginormous success. Epic didn't get a lot of paper play. We're hoping that the app resurrects the paper play. When I learned the game, even back after they had their wave of retail sales, when I went in to clean out all the stores so I could build constructed decks, they didn't know that it wasn't a deck builder. So we're really...
And I'm sorry, finish. That's my fault. I apologize.
We can really hope that the app will lead towards a resurrection of the paper product. I think it's a less hard sell on friends to say, hey, do you want to learn another game that's a little bit like Magic? Where before that's very hard for people. They run from that. Whereas now you can say, look, man, try it out for free on this beautiful app first, and they might just decide on their own they like it, and now maybe we'll start seeing it in stores again.
Well, what's so almost baffling to me is it sounds like I'm the biggest Epic fanboy, which I know I'm not, but I think people are dumb. I'll put it that way. Epic, the original base set release, is ridiculous. You got, in Magic the Gathering terms, you got a cube in a box for under $15. If you were playing Magic, you could not build a cube, let alone this balanced, this fair to play, this diverse. I think people are absolutely ridiculous. Then you take in Constructed, which is a way different application, and White Wizards actually has a paradox. They're actually mostly known for Star Realms, and to be fair, Star Realms absolutely is great, etc., etc., etc. But there was a review from other viewers where they didn't seem to understand that Epic wasn't a deck builder, and they literally almost every negative they had to say about Epic was how it wasn't a deck builder, and you just go, Nowhere in the box does it say deck builder. It says from the designers of Star Realms. You made a logic conclusion and a fallacy that this was going to be a deck builder. People are allowed to have multiple interests, and it's like, oh no, how dare you not just be a follow-up to Star Realms? Well, it's kind of a completely different avenue, and it draws on their experiences as Magic pros and experienced players in other CCGs, Ascension, everything. Epic just has this appeal that unfortunately is in such a clogged, worn down environment. I mean, if you had to pick the top playing constructible card games, you have Magic, you have Yu-Gi-Oh, you have Pokemon. Beyond that, you start looking at games with miniatures like Hero Clicks and stuff like that. The environment's so hard for a constructed game. The app, I think, will actually be the solution to so many things, just because Brendan and I have talked in other episodes how we really like the game, truly like the game at its core, everything else. My wife hates it, and I don't have to hide that from anyone. The biggest problem, it got to the middle game of Magic on turn one. So she just didn't feel like investing the time into understanding that giant jump forward. One of our other friends we play with is not able to grasp the strategies and everything else basically in real time. And that's not in a derogatory sense. It's just their understanding of the timing window changes and everything else. Basically, it's too different from Magic for them to grasp. It basically almost feels like a foreign product. And I think its similarities in Magic are both good and bad. It's building on a company that's known for making arguably one of the greatest deck builders of our generation. And it's a down and out product. It's basically always the redhead stepchild of a company that's known for doing something else better, known for doing something else first. And people just can't seem to grasp what Epic is about. And the app, in my opinion, is basically the fix to that, because people can do it on their own time. If your area doesn't support constructed play or whatever else, you can find it online. Because that actually is our problem here in Pittsburgh. Please don't find my house. Is that everything is based around Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and Hero. They don't have another day in the week to spare for an Epic League that's forming. I mean, there's no place for us out here. So the app is basically there to fix things. So I'm very happy that we have the app, but I also think it's a necessary evil where if we didn't have the app, this game was probably going to be gone in like another year or so.
Well, and that's the case for, I think, anyone trying to introduce a collectible card game right now. It's that model is tougher. I think they got
outdated and dead.
they get around the tough sell of, again, trying to convince your friends to try something that is kind of like Magic. Again, I didn't anticipate, like you said early in the episode, this completely free release was brilliant. I had no idea they were going to do it that way. And now it's not a hard sell. It's very easy to say, listen, go to the App Store. It's free. You've seen me playing it. You know how into it I am. And I think the games that you like, you might like it too. That's enough, hopefully, that this gets enough eyes. And maybe we really will start seeing it at least back in the stores. And then, again, it just depends. I mean, who knows where we're at a year from now? Maybe this app is a giant success and stores will feel compelled to start running game nights that feature Epic.
I truly hope so, just because to me it fixes so many problems of the collectible card game by being I'm trying to think what the franchise free term is. Expandable card game. It's
a living card game. Yeah.
No, living card game is owned by Fantasy Flight Games. You actually can't use that term.
Oh, well, I'm still calling Epic a collectible living card game.
Well, I understand. I know I'm just joking. That's semantics. So that's truly the thing, is that they patented that name. So they only Fantasy Flight Games can make LCGs. But this is, and what it boggles my mind that the retail price, you just buy 3 of everything and you can play constructed. You buy 3 of everything, you can play their cube format. You buy 1 of everything, and you can play my favorite format, which is just random 30s because you're crazy and bad at everything. So, I mean, it's such a flexible product, and the fact that, obviously we've been going on and on about skill level and everything else, but it also, unfortunately, is getting lumped in with Magic the Gathering for multiple reasons. One of which, of course, being the skilled talent behind between Darwin and Rob. I'm just like, man, I know where you guys came from. I used to be reading Proving Grounds back in the day, and I'm like, I know your names. I've never met them, but like I know your name. And then you go, well, what have you guys come up with? Like, we fixed Magic. Like, oh, well, that seems novel. And then you play the game, like, oh, so you really fixed Magic. That's a pretty good call.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is one way of looking at it. I mean, if you look at Epic and you say, okay, everyone gets access to all of the cards, they're all free, at least digitally, and there is no ramp up of power. Everybody starts fully powered and able to play their most powerful cards on turn 1. Really, what's your excuse, I guess? If all the cards are free, everyone has access, and everyone's fully powered from the start, there's no mana burn, it really comes down to it's skill intensive and decision based, calculated risk, patience. And I agree, it's a tremendous game. You have sold me, Travis. Brandon, I think you're in, right?
No, literally, that's actually how I contacted him. Is like they're like, oh, hey, here's the release of the game you paid for on Kick. I shouldn't say paid for. You invested in on Kickstarter. I'm like, hey, man, it's free, so get in and get start playing. And obviously, I'm very fortunate. I have friends who are actually willing to put in the effort to do that. I'm not going to pretend I'm not. But at the same time, it is a rewarding investment, and I feel so old saying it, but there aren't many things you can say that about, because you take video games or whatever, some of the most competitive games and whatnot that are quote unquote rewarding investments. If you're not putting in basically a second job's worth of effort, if you're not putting in 20 hours a week, if you're not talking with teammates and everything else, or if you're not buying every update, or worse, some games are valid for 1 year. Some of the sports games, and the sports games, like, oh my God, I'm old. But the ones that they're like, oh, well, you have this great roster. Well, did you get the 2021 game? No. Well, 2020 is shutting down tomorrow. Epic's not shutting down tomorrow. That it almost it really truly baffles me. Like, if this had come out before Magic, yes, Magic would not exist. And I understand that's a completely paradoxical Back to the Future discussion. But where we're at, do you, with your feelings of random 30s, and I'm not putting you in a negative light for that, if you had to add a format, do you think that the constructed singleton, I believe that's the term, for here's 60 cards and make a 30-card deck, do you think that is the format to add next for free play, or do you think that should be an arena only format?
I mean, tough to say. I think that a more traditional singleton, where maybe they give you all of the cards in a color, but you select 60 when they have enough, or even just select 30, something like that.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm like, ooh, that's a tough sell.
I mean, I think stuff like other ways of allowing you to select from a pool of cards, and then implement into a deck. I mean, I would love. I know you've referenced the cube draft format. I would love to see that in app. I'm not sure when they would have something like that ready to go, but
or
that would be
obviously, yeah.
But I think that's the place where you can probably get 8 players for it. And the one time I was fortunate enough to play, it was a blast.
So what do you think, Brandon? Since you're coming in at literally, you're the bridge between myself and Matt. You are the person who's one coming in new, but you have the experience in collectible card games. You have experience. Actually, you have experience in Yu-Gi-Oh. I do not. I have experience in Pokemon because I was alive in the late '90s.
No, I play
Uh,
Yu-Gi-Oh. I've played Yu-Gi-Oh. I've played Pokemon, both on the
God, I miss
digital
Pokemon.
format and card format. That's what happens when you have a 7-year-old that's interested in Pokemon. You have to teach them how to
And
play.
no, you just smack their hand. You just go no. So what do you think? I mean, what sort of a format do you think is the next hook? Because I mean, just obviously, just for the sake of spitballing, what do you think is the next?
Well, I don't really feel that there's a next hook in this format of game as far as sitting down and playing a card game, because the hook is being able to play it without having the cleanup. You don't have to worry about anything as far as cards, dice, sleeves, any extra investment in going down that road of I just spent a ton of money on the right card sleeves, the playmat, the dice, the tokens. Kind of like when the reason why I feel that we enjoy uh, the random 30s is it kind of hits that Keyforge slot where we got into Keyforge. We were really interested in it for a while, and it was because it was just that here's your deck, you play it. And that's where you have to go from there. That really gave you an aspect of digging in and feeling like, hey, this is going to be awesome, and I really enjoy it. Do you agree with that or
No,
no?
I do, and before we sign off, I'll just add my thoughts that I'm kind of crazy. I want the demigods slash gods. That's in my opinion, because of how Magic's most popular format is EDH. I think that the demigods slash gods, since there's 4 demigods and there's like 8 gods, that's my opinion. Is that I mean, if I had to pick a format, because you have this character that can't be dealt with. You can't bounce at anything else. Some have a 1 gold ability. Some just have a static ability at the beginning of your turn, do this, or during your turn, do whatever. I think because that breaks it, but it's both constructed but also built around me, it gives your deck an identity. That's my opinion. But obviously, who knows what White Wizards are going to do? You never know that. But anyway,
Let,
we've been
let
going
me
long
let
in the
me
tooth, so I'll let it finish
let,
up. Yes.
let me ask you guys one here real quick before we go as well. Would a multiplayer format excite you guys, or do you guys really kind of look to Epic as, hey, this is my one-on-one itch to scratch?
Brandon, go ahead because I know my answer.
I really do feel that it does need a multiplayer format, in that a lot of the reasons why you see Magic be successful is that you can get in there and play against people that you normally wouldn't get to play with, or be able to pull a community together where you can say everybody I know is able to come in and play and really just have a chance to enjoy the game together. So having that
I,
multiplayer format allows you to feel like these cards have more meaning and different strategies you actually get to break out and actually play.
I'm actually going to take the literally exact opposite. One, multiplayer takes way more programming, way more people, because in any of the online multiplayer turn by turn formats in games, someone sometimes gets a bad internet connection, kills the game, absolutely kills it. You're like, oh, we're waiting for this person. Oh, they get timed out, they get replaced by a bot. Well, if the bot that exists is anything like the AI, and the AI in Dark Draft, great drafter, terrible player. So if they get replaced or filled in by bots, you're not really getting the same multiplayer experience we all would want. Following that up, besides the fact that it's already a pain to program and maintain and everything, many of Epic's best features are in the 1v1 turn structure, because I don't think, Brandon, we've never played more than 1v1. The rules for more than 2 players, you get 1 gold for every turn that's not you. Meaning, just like in EDH and Magic, you're going to wait till literally the last opportunity to spend your gold. So it makes some players' turns almost invalidated. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Are you attacking me? No. Well, I'm not going to play a board clip. It makes certain cards so much more ubiquitous. It makes certain plays like surprise attack. You're literally going to wait until you have a timing window. And if you're playing real time, 4 players, sake of discovery, it's such a programming nightmare. It is such a timing nightmare. The game, in my opinion, is so much better 1v1. Now, I'm not saying I wouldn't play an 8-person draft and then everyone gets paired off, plays a game, waits for the next pairing to come up. I absolutely would play that. I would be down for an 8-person cube, and then we just do pairings. Okay, make sure you're signing on for, say, 3 hours or whatever. Great, I'll do. But actual live time multiplayer is just such pain, and the game itself could be done in person, but you'd be like, hey, John, you need to play and you need to stop screwing around, whatever. But because what happens if player 2 in a 4-player game decides they're not going to play or their internet connection breaks and they time out? Well, the whole game, everything you have done goes to par. That's my opinion, but, Matt, to you, your own question.
No, these are really good points. I agree. I think the concerns are there with people dropping and things like internet, and that all at least optimistically points to what I guess you guys assume to be real-time multiplayer games. I mean, are we all agreeing that asynchronous multiplayer games with all the passes just sound bad? Is that the thought?
The only person I've played only 2 people I've played asynchronous are in this conversation. I will not play anyone else asynchronous. I'm not letting them tie me down. I'm not letting them screw over my game because I forgot what's going on. Apologies for harshness. I deny every challenge from anyone that's not the 2 of you. Hand to God, I do it all the time. I've been challenged by multiple people. I'm not putting out names. It's nothing against them as a person. I am not playing it because of how the async works and all the timing windows. I will not play asynchronous.
Yeah, fair. I think a lot of people kind of look at this game as being not ideal for asynchronous, and that's certainly fair. I think it's great to have a healthy real-time queue. I'm loving that that's the case now that we have people in it.
Well, I mean, like, I could send out an asynchronous challenge or whatever. I'll get someone to accept, guaranteed almost every time for the sake of discussion. But I will also wait. I will cycle that new game challenge. I will cycle it 12 times in a row. So basically a full hour to get an actual live player. I will do that over asynchronous all time, every time, just because the game thrives off that tension. Whereas Star Realms, you took your entire turn uninterrupted. This game requires an interaction probably every what do you think, 4 seconds, 5 seconds? You need someone to validate you, being like, no, that plays okay. No, that plays okay. No, that plays okay. It takes you 4 days to resolve attacking for 2 with a muse. Nope.
No, it's funny. I hear all your points, and yet I think I've got about 24 asynchronous games going right now.
Well, that's because they know who you are. They don't know who I am. And I'm like, nope, I'm just not playing.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for having me on. I will look forward to not only hearing additional episodes, but perhaps coming on again sometime. And once again, thank you.
We're calling you. I'm going to be at your door tomorrow. I don't know where you live. I'm going to find out in the next 12 hours. Just look for me. Be like, hey, time for a live episode. Let's go.
I am social distancing at the moment, but
I'll social undistancing. But yes. So I just want to say, no, really, I cannot thank you enough because, one, you've both been a guide for me for how I even should play this game. You're like, hey, did you know the check pass? I'm like, what are you talking about? So you've actually helped me get better at the game, even though I still lose to you every time. But also just recommendations for how we should do things with the show, with basically anything with what we're doing. And it's good to know that someone who is affluent in Star Realms made the transition to Epic and didn't do so just because it was the next Call of Duty. You're not like, oh, it's Call of Duty 17. Well, clearly I have to give up playing 16. You made the transition because you want to. You made the transition because you like the game. So it's good to know that you have people who want to keep. And Tom Sorensen, who's never going to hear anything I say, I just want to say, literally, your web work is the foundation for my enjoyment of this game. But anyway, yay, Tom! Thanks for not listening.
Anything else from you, Brandon?
Really, the only things I can say is thank you guys for listening. Thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with us and have the opportunity to really get to pick your mind a little bit and understanding the game a little bit better. But we didn't really get into specific card mechanics. We did get the chance to hear from you, get a chance to know you, and we definitely look forward to having you come back on if you ever feel interested and you have the free time.
I'm sure I will, guys. Thanks so much.
All right, awesome.
So like, share, subscribe, and make sure you follow along.
Or don't. I mean, that's an option too, right?
If you really don't want to, that's fine.
I mean, I don't subscribe.
Well, it depends on which account you're talking about. Well, that's for another time. Have a great night, guys.